Maria had never imagined her life would take such a sharp and painful turn. She had grown up believing that marriage was a bond filled with trust, respect, and shared dreams. When she married Jared, she thought she was stepping into a future where she would build a home with someone who cared for her. In the early days of their marriage, Jared had made promises of comfort, of stability, and of a happy life. He would smile warmly and talk about the future as if it was a bright road waiting for them. Maria believed every word, because she wanted to believe in love. But as time passed, Jared slowly changed. Small things disappeared first: his patience, his gentle tone, the respect in his conversations. He started staying out late, spending time with friends who did not care about responsibility. Maria tried to talk to him, to understand what was troubling him, but he brushed her aside. What began as simple laziness grew into a habit of ignoring work and waiting for luck to solve their problems. Bills started to pile up, the house became tense with silence, and Maria felt herself walking on uncertain ground every day. She still tried her best to keep things together. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and even took small jobs around the neighborhood just to earn a little money. She hoped that maybe, if she carried some of the weight, Jared would find the strength to carry the rest. But instead of appreciating her efforts, he grew more distant. Sometimes he would stare at the floor with frustration in his eyes, blaming life, blaming fate, and blaming everything except himself. The tension in the house became heavier than the air Maria breathed. Jared would talk about money as if it was a mountain they could never climb. Then he started taking small things from the house and selling them: an old radio, a set of tools, a chair. Maria asked him to stop, but he would always say, "We need money. You don't understand." She understood too well. She understood that he was slipping into a place she could no longer reach. Then came the morning that changed everything. Maria was washing dishes when she heard footsteps outside. She thought it was the neighbor, but when she stepped out to check, she saw Jared standing with a stranger. The man was tall, dressed in dusty clothes, with a hat that shaded his eyes. He had a calm presence, like someone used to long days under the open sky. Maria had never seen him before. Jared called her over. His voice was stiff, as if he was trying to hide something. Maria walked slowly, feeling an unknown worry build inside her. When she reached them, Jared avoided her eyes. The stranger nodded politely but remained quiet. "Maria," Jared said finally, "this is Luke. He's a cowboy passing through. He needs help on his ranch. I told him that you could go with him." Maria froze. For a moment, she couldn't even understand his words. Go with him? What did that even mean? She looked at Jared, waiting for him to explain that it was a misunderstanding. But instead, she saw guilt flicker across his face. A deep, heavy silence fell between them. "What do you mean?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jared took a breath and spoke in a low, uncomfortable tone. I can't take care of things anymore. I'm drowning here." Luke offered something, and I agreed. Maria felt the world tilt. A wave of disbelief washed over her. She stepped back as the truth settled like a stone in her chest. He wasn't asking her. He wasn't even thinking about her feelings. He had decided something unimaginable. He had exchanged her presence, her life, for a few dollars. Luke noticed her shock. His expression softened, and he spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, slow, and surprisingly gentle. He said he didn't want to cause her discomfort, and that he wasn't planning anything harmful. But Maria's mind was too overwhelmed to absorb his words. Her husband, someone she trusted, had handed her over to a stranger. The world around her seemed to blur. She felt as if her body was standing there, but her heart had stepped away. She couldn't understand how someone she had shared a home with could see her as something he could simply give away. Tears didn't come yet. The pain was too deep, too sudden. Jared avoided her gaze again. He muttered something about needing a chance to start fresh, about needing money, about making the best decision he could. But Maria couldn't accept that. She felt like her entire life was slipping through her fingers. Luke noticed her trembling and took a small step back to give her space. He wasn't pushing her or rushing her. He waited patiently as if he understood she needed time to grasp the situation, but the decision had already been made not by her, but by the one person she trusted most. Maria felt her voice break as she whispered, "Why?" Jared didn't answer. He simply turned away, unable to face her pain. Luke gently said he would take care of her on the ranch, that she wouldn't be mistreated, and that he respected her as a human being. His words were soft, but they couldn't erase the wound she felt. She only nodded weakly because she didn't know what else to do. Her world had shifted, and she had no control over it. She packed a small bag with trembling hands. The house felt unfamiliar now, as if she no longer belonged there. Every corner reminded her of the promises that had faded. She looked around one last time, feeling the weight of disappointment in her chest. When she stepped outside, Luke was waiting patiently. He held his hat in his hands, as if trying to show her respect. She noticed he wasn't harsh or demanding. He simply guided her toward his horse calmly, giving her time. His quiet manners surprised her, but they could not erase the pain of what had happened. As they began their journey away from the town, Maria kept her eyes on the ground. The path felt long, and her heart felt heavier with each step. She didn't say a word, and Luke didn't force her to speak. He walked beside her, leading the horse slowly, allowing her to breathe and gather herself. The plain stretched wide before them, open land, tall grass, and endless sky. It was a world completely different from the one she had known. But Maria's mind was too clouded to appreciate it. Her thoughts kept returning to the same question. How could Jared give her away so easily? Was she worth so little to him? Was she truly a burden he wanted to remove? Luke glanced at her once in a while, checking if she was all right. His concern felt genuine, but Maria couldn't open up yet. She had been hurt deeply, and trust was a fragile thing. Still, she noticed something about him he carried. No anger, no impatience, and no demand. He walked as though he understood that she needed gentle space. Hours passed before they reached his ranch. It was a wide piece of land with horses grazing, a small wooden house, and calm silence surrounding everything. It felt peaceful, but Maria wasn't sure if peace was meant for her anymore. She stepped down from the horse slowly and looked around. Luke invited her inside the house, speaking kindly. He offered her water and a place to rest. He told her she was safe there, and that she would not be forced to do anything she wasn't ready for. His words surprised her again. She had expected coldness or authority, but instead she found someone who treated her with respect. Still, Maria felt her heart ache. She had lost her home, her marriage, and her sense of security in one morning. Even though she was in a safer place now, she felt uncertain about everything. That night, she lay on a simple but comfortable bed, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts were loud, and sleep felt distant. She wondered what her future would look like. She wondered if she would ever feel normal again. But as the night grew quieter, she also remembered Luke's gentle tone, his patience, and his silent support. Maybe, she thought, this new place was not meant to break her. Maybe it was a chance to rebuild, even if she didn't understand how yet. With that small thought, Maria closed her eyes, still hurting but holding onto a thin thread of hope that life had not ended, only changed. Maria woke up the next morning feeling unsure of where she was. For a moment, she forgot everything that had happened. She blinked at the wooden ceiling above her and listened to the soft sounds outside, the rustling of leaves, the quiet steps of animals, and the gentle wind moving across the land. It was peaceful, far more peaceful than any morning she had experienced in a long time. But then the memory returned, and her heart tightened. This was not her home. This was Luke's ranch. She was no longer with Jared. Her life had changed in a single day. Maria sat up slowly. The room was small but neat, with a clean blanket folded at the end of the bed. Someone had placed a cup of water on a table beside her. She guessed it was Luke. He seemed like the type of man who paid attention to small things, even if he didn't talk much. She stood up, washed her face with the cold water in a bowl, and took a deep breath. She didn't know what the day would bring, but she had no choice except to face it. When she stepped outside, sunlight warmed her skin. The ranch looked even wider in daylight. Horses grazed calmly in the open field, their tails swaying lazily. There was a soft smell of hay, fresh air, and something comforting about the open land. Luke was near the barn, fixing a broken wooden gate. He noticed her and stopped what he was doing. "Good morning," he said politely, not pushing the conversation. His voice was gentle, just like the day before. Maria nodded slightly. She still felt nervous around him. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because everything in her life felt unfamiliar. She didn't know what he expected from her or what role she was supposed to play here. She didn't even know how long she would be staying. Luke wiped his hands and walked toward her with slow, respectful steps. "I didn't want to wake you. You were resting," he said. "If you're hungry, I made some breakfast." She hesitated. No one had cooked for her in a long time. Back home, she had always been the one doing everything. But Luke wasn't treating her like someone who had been brought here unwillingly. He treated her like a guest, maybe even someone he wanted to help. Inside the small kitchen, he had prepared simple food, eggs, bread, and warm tea. Maria ate quietly, while Luke sat across from her, giving her space. He didn't ask questions or bring up what had happened with Jared. Instead, he talked about the ranch, the horses, and the quiet life he lived. He spoke as if he wanted her to feel comfortable, not pressured. Maria found herself relaxing just a little. She wasn't used to calm mornings. Jared had usually been impatient, unhappy, or complaining about something. This silence felt peaceful. After breakfast, Luke stood up and said, "You don't have to work if you don't want to, but if you'd like to help with small things, you're welcome to." Maria appreciated the freedom in his words. He wasn't forcing her to do anything. He wasn't treating her as someone who owed him something. She took a moment to think, and finally nodded. Doing work, she realized, might help her mind settle. It might give her something to focus on. Luke showed her around the ranch slowly. The stable, the barn, the small vegetable garden, and the chicken coop. The place wasn't fancy, but it was well cared for. She noticed how everything had a purpose, and even the animals seemed content in their surroundings. The ranch felt like a world of its own, separate from all the noise and troubles she had left behind. Maria started with small tasks, gathering eggs, watering the plants, and brushing one of the calmer horses. She had never been close to horses before, and felt nervous at first. But Luke stayed nearby, guiding her with patience. As she touched the horse's smooth coat and heard its gentle breathing, she felt a surprising sense of calm. The days began to follow a new rhythm. Maria woke up early, helped with breakfast, and worked lightly around the ranch. At first, she only did simple tasks. But as days turned into weeks, she learned more. Luke taught her how to feed the horses properly, how to tie ropes, and how to walk near the animals without fear. He never raised his voice, never rushed her, and never looked at her with anything other than quiet respect. Maria started noticing things about him. He worked hard, but he worked gently. He treated his animals kindly, spoke softly to them, and never lost patience. He lived alone, and although he didn't talk about his past often, Maria could sense that he carried a kind of quiet sadness. But it wasn't the heavy kind that made a home dark. It was the calm kind. The kind that came from someone who had learned to accept life's harder moments. Sometimes in the evenings, they sat on the porch. The sunsets on the ranch were stunning, wide colors spreading across the sky like soft paint. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat in silence, watching the day end peacefully. In those moments, Maria felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. Slowly, she began to smile again. Not every day, but more often than before. Luke noticed but never pointed it out. He simply continued treating her with patience and kindness. One afternoon, while she was brushing a horse, Maria stopped and looked around the ranch. She realized something surprising. She no longer felt like a stranger here. The land felt familiar, the animals felt gentle, and Luke felt like someone she could trust. She wasn't ready to open her heart completely, her past still hurt too deeply, but she felt a certain comfort that she had thought she would never feel again. She also noticed changes within herself. She felt stronger. Her days were peaceful. Her mind had begun to heal, without her even realizing it. She started taking more initiative, helping with bigger tasks, and even joking lightly with Luke on rare occasions. One day, while they were working in the stable, Luke looked at her and said, "You're doing really well. I'm glad you're here." There was sincerity in his voice, and Maria felt warmth spread through her chest. For so long, she had lived with someone who didn't appreciate her. Hearing a simple, kind sentence felt powerful. Maria responded softly, "Thank you for everything." Luke nodded, as if telling her she never had to thank him for kindness. Weeks passed, and the ranch began to feel like a place where she could rebuild her life, piece by piece. She didn't know what her future would look like or what would happen next. But she knew one thing clearly. This place was helping her heal. She was learning to trust again, not quickly, but slowly, the way fragile things need time. Maria still thought about Jared sometimes, but the memories no longer controlled her. They were fading like distant shadows. Here, in this quiet land, with open skies, and someone who treated her with respect, she felt a new beginning taking shape, and though she didn't realize it yet, this simple new life was slowly drawing her and Luke closer, one gentle moment at a time. Maria's life on the ranch had settled into a peaceful routine, one that slowly began to change her from the inside. Each day felt calmer than the one before, and each morning she woke with a sense of quiet purpose. She was no longer surrounded by fear or uncertainty. Instead, she found herself surrounded by soft winds, warm sunlight, and the steady rhythm of ranch work that brought comfort to her heart. As the weeks turned into months, Maria grew more confident. She walked through the ranch with ease, no longer hesitating around the horses or the tasks Luke gave her. The fear she once carried had softened into a quiet strength. Luke noticed this change in her, though he never pointed it out. He simply offered a gentle smile whenever he saw her doing something with skill or courage. One morning, Maria was feeding the horses when Luke entered the stable holding 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to her without saying much, just a small gesture of kindness. Maria took it with a soft thank you, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. They sat on a bale of hay and drank quietly. The horses moved calmly around them, their soft steps echoing through the stable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence was comfortable now, filled with an unspoken understanding that had grown between them over time. Eventually, Luke broke the silence. "You're settling in well," he said gently. Maria nodded. "It feels peaceful here. It's the first time in a long time that I feel safe." Luke looked at her with thoughtful eyes. "I'm glad," he said. "You deserve peace." His simple words carried more meaning than she expected. Maria lowered her gaze, touched and a little shy. She wasn't used to someone speaking to her with such sincerity. The kindness in Luke's voice warmed her heart. The days continued to pass gently. Maria learned how to ride a horse slowly, with Luke guiding her patiently. The first time she tried, she almost fell, but Luke was there, steady and calm, reassuring her that she could try again. And she did. Every day she improved, and every day Luke was quietly proud. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Maria and Luke sat outside on the porch watching the sun set. The sky glowed in shades of orange, pink, and soft purple. The land stretched endlessly around them, and the cool wind brushed lightly against their skin. Maria hugged her knees to her chest as she watched the horizon. "Do you ever miss anything from before?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself with the question. Luke took a moment before answering. "Yes," he said softly, "but not in a painful way. My wife passed away years ago. She was gentle, kind, the kind of person who made a home feel warm." Maria turned her head toward him. This was the first time he had spoken about his past with such openness. "I'm sorry," she said genuinely. Luke nodded, accepting her sympathy calmly. "Life has many turns," he continued. "Some bring pain, some bring comfort. I've learned to accept both." Maria looked down at her hands, thinking about her own past. She hadn't spoken about Jared since arriving here. She didn't want to remember the hurt, but she felt she owed Luke honesty. "I never thought my life would change the way it did," she said quietly. "I thought marriage meant support. But I was wrong." Luke didn't interrupt. He listened carefully, giving her the space to speak. "I felt lost," she continued. "I felt like I didn't matter. Coming here, it felt strange at first. But you've treated me with respect since the beginning. You didn't have to. But you did." Luke turned toward her slightly. "Everyone deserves respect," he said simply. Maria felt a soft warmth rising in her chest. She wasn't sure what it was, but it felt comforting. As days passed, the bond between them grew deeper, not through grand moments, but through small, gentle ones. Luke would teach her how to fix things around the ranch. Maria would prepare meals and share stories from her childhood. They laughed occasionally at small mistakes they made while learning things together. They found joy in simple tasks, like planting vegetables or mending fences. Their connection wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, tender, and real, built from trust instead of fear. One evening, a strong wind blew across the ranch. Maria was trying to gather loose sheets from outside when one of them flew away. She ran after it, but the wind was faster. Suddenly, she tripped on a piece of wood and almost fell. Luke, who had been walking toward her, reached out and caught her just in time. For a moment, their hands met, and Maria felt a spark of safety, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She steadied herself. Breathing deeply, Luke held her arm just long enough to make sure she was balanced, then stepped back respectfully. "Are you all right?" he asked warmly. Maria nodded, feeling her heart beating a little faster. Not out of fear, but out of something new, something she wasn't ready to name yet. As the wind settled, they both laughed softly at the runaway sheet. It was the kind of simple, light moment that made life feel bright again. As more time passed, Maria noticed that Luke always stood a little closer when she seemed uncertain. He always offered help when she struggled with something new. He always listened when she spoke, even if her words were hesitant. And she found herself looking forward to their shared moments, breakfast conversations, quiet walks, evening tea on the porch. One night, after a peaceful dinner, Maria found herself unable to sleep. She walked outside and sat under the stars. The sky was clear, sprinkled with tiny lights that made the night look magical. A few minutes later, Luke stepped outside quietly. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Maria shook her head and smiled slightly. "It's too beautiful outside to stay in." Luke chuckled softly and sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. They sat quietly, letting the night speak for them. After a while, Maria spoke. "Thank you for giving me space to heal," she said softly. "You didn't ask for anything from me. You let me find myself again." Luke looked at her with gentle eyes. "Healing takes time," he said, "and you've been strong through it all." Maria felt her heart warm again. She wasn't used to being called strong. No one had ever said that to her before. She looked at Luke, and for the first time, she saw not just the quiet cowboy who had taken her to the ranch, but a man whose heart carried patience, kindness, and understanding. A question formed inside her heart, something she wasn't ready to speak aloud, but she knew the answer slowly taking shape. She trusted him. She cared for him. There was a bond between them, now soft but strong, quiet but deep. As the night wrapped around them, Maria felt something she never expected to feel again after everything she had been through. Hope for a future. Not alone, but beside someone who truly saw her, valued her, and respected her. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't need to. What she felt in that moment was enough a beginning that was quietly becoming something beautiful. The days continued to pass gently on the ranch, each one bringing Maria a little closer to a life she never imagined for herself. The pain of her past no longer controlled her thoughts. Instead, her mind was filled with the calm rhythm of daily work, the peace of open fields, and the quiet moments she shared with Luke, moments that grew warmer with every passing day. Maria had lived on the ranch long enough now to understand every sound it made. She could tell when the horses were restless, when the wind was shifting, when the chickens had laid eggs, and when the grass needed water. She had become a part of the ranch, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged there. And Luke saw this clearly. He admired her strength, her patience, and the gentle care she gave to everything around her. One evening, after a long day of work, Maria and Luke stood outside watching the sunset again. The sky was a soft blend of gold and rose, spreading across the horizon like a beautiful painting. This had become one of their favorite quiet moments, a time when words weren't necessary, because the silence between them felt warm, not empty. Maria glanced at Luke, noticing how the sunlight rested on his shoulders. He looked peaceful, steady, and strong. She felt her heart soften with gratitude. Sometimes she wondered how her life would have turned out if she had never come to the ranch. The thought made her shiver. She didn't want to imagine that life anymore. "Luke," she said softly, breaking the silence. He turned to her with his gentle attention. "Yes? I've been thinking about everything," she said. "About how much you've helped me. About how kind you've been since the day I came here." Luke looked down at the ground, as if finding the right words. "I didn't do anything special," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to feel safe." Maria smiled slightly. "Safe is something I didn't feel for a long time." Luke's eyes softened even more. "You deserve safety, and respect, and peace." Maria took a deep breath, feeling her heart fill with emotion. She had carried the weight of her past for so long, but now she felt light, lighter than she had felt in years. Over the next few days, Maria found herself thinking more and more about her future. Not the future she once dreamed of, but the future she now believed she could build. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't lost. She was someone growing into her own strength. Someone deserving of love and kindness. One morning, while Maria was sweeping the porch, she noticed Luke walking toward her with a thoughtful expression. He looked like he had been thinking deeply about something. "Maria," he said softly. She paused and looked up at him. "Yes?" He took a breath. His voice was calm but carried a gentle seriousness. "Can we talk for a moment? There's something I want to say." Maria felt her heart beat a little faster. "Of course." Luke walked closer to her, stopping only a few steps away. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. It was the first time she had seen him unsure. "I've been thinking for a long time," he said slowly. "From the day you came here, I wanted to make sure you felt safe and respected. I never wanted you to feel like you owed me anything. That was important to me." Maria nodded. She knew this already. She had felt it every day. "But as time passed," Luke continued, "I found myself caring about you. Not out of duty, but out of something deeper. You've brought warmth back into this house. You've brought life to this ranch in a way I didn't expect." Maria felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't surprised by his words, but hearing them made her heart rise gently. "I never wanted to pressure you," Luke said, "and I still don't. But I want to be honest with you." He paused for a moment, then added quietly, "I care about you, Maria. Truly." Maria felt a soft wave of emotion wash through her. She had known it. In small moments, the way he watched her with kindness, the way he listened, the way he supported her without ever asking for anything in return. But hearing him say it felt like a door opening inside her heart. She stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Luke, I care about you too." His eyes lifted, filled with warmth and relief. Maria continued, her voice trembling slightly but full of truth. "I wasn't ready before. I was healing. I was trying to find myself again. But now, I feel something different. I feel comfortable here. I feel at peace. And I feel close to you." Luke didn't move closer. He waited for her, giving her the space she deserved. Maria took one small step forward, closing the distance completely. "You helped me rebuild my life," she said. "And now, I want to build my future with you." Luke's breath caught quietly. He wasn't expecting her to speak with such clarity, such gentle courage. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. Maria nodded, her eyes shining with calm certainty. "Yes, I'm sure." Luke let out a slow breath of relief, a warm smile growing on his face. It was one of the softest, happiest smiles she had ever seen from him. He carefully reached out, taking her hands in his. His touch was gentle, steady, and respectful, just like everything he had done since the day she arrived. From that day forward, their bond grew even deeper. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was natural and peaceful. Like two lives slowly weaving together into one, they continued working side by side every day. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet evenings. They talked more about their dreams and hopes. Maria began planting a garden behind the house, and Luke helped her build a small fence around it. They celebrated simple moments: fresh vegetables from the garden, a new horse born in the stable, a well-fixed fence. Life became a collection of gentle joys. As seasons changed, their hearts changed too. They no longer lived as two people healing separately, but as two people growing together. The ranch, once a place of quiet solitude, became a home filled with warmth. The rooms felt brighter. The mornings felt sweeter. The nights felt peaceful. One day, near the end of spring, Luke gathered his courage once again. He had been thinking about it for weeks, wanting to find the right moment. Finally, as the sun set behind the hills, he approached Maria near the garden she loved so much. She was watering the plants, humming a soft tune. When she saw him, she smiled warmly. "Luke," she said gently, "you look thoughtful." He chuckled lightly. "I have something to ask you." Maria set the watering can aside and faced him, curious. Luke took her hands again, just like the first time. "Maria," he said softly, "sharing my life with you has been a blessing I never expected. You've brought happiness back into this place. You've filled the ranch with hope." Maria felt her heart flutter. Luke continued, his voice steady and full of love. "I want you to stay in my life. Not just as someone who helps on the ranch. Not as a guest, but as my partner, my wife, if that's what you want too." Maria felt tears form in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of deep, gentle joy. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Luke. I want that too. I want a life with you." Luke's smile widened with relief and happiness. They stood quietly for a moment, holding each other's hands as the sky turned golden behind them. Maria felt something she had never felt before, not fear, not uncertainty, but a deep and peaceful happiness. She had gone from being abandoned and lost to finding a life filled with love and respect. Her past no longer defined her. Her present did. Her future did. She wasn't someone who had been given away anymore. She was someone who had been chosen genuinely, tenderly, and wholeheartedly. And she chose Luke in return. Together, they walked back toward the ranch house, ready to begin a new chapter, one built on kindness, trust, and a love that grew from the simplest, gentlest moments.